Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And today I've got an epic thinker. This is going to be a real treat for all of us. I've been looking forward to this. We've been trying to hook up for, I don't know, probably 3, 4, 5 weeks to make this happen. But I'm really excited to get to bring to you Tony Rubleski. Tony is a world-class author, speaker. I'm going to get to tell you all of his story and how he got to here. Or he is actually. So let's get going. Tony, thanks for joining us.
Well, you're welcome. Happy almost New Year here. And glad we could get this on the schedule finally for both of us.
Yes. It's going to be well worth the wait, I'm sure. I can't wait to dig into that beautiful mind of yours. It's just the way you think is just so unique. So let's start out at the beginning, though. Let's kind of start off. Tony's just a regular, everyday guy that gets born to whom and where'd you grow up?
Well, Midwesterner, thank you for the introduction. And, very much a typical Midwesterner, middle class, grateful for that. That's not a negative, but it's kind of a quick overview. Family all worked for General Motors. Mom worked for the post office. And I think if anything, being the youngest of 9 kids in a blended family, I learned a lot watching people. So it was a lot of fun growing up in that environment. I have some siblings and step siblings that I know better than others. But the influence of being around people and watching that, that huge family here in the Midwest definitely had an impact on what I do now. So.
Okay. So what would be some of the lessons that you'd say you took away from that as an observer?
I think curiosity is the biggest one of what not to do. And if you're going to do something, how to get away with it. Obviously, as an adolescent, thank God we didn't have social media. I'm 50 years old now, so I'm grateful to be at the 50 marker. But I think if anything was learning creativity, how to get along with people of different, ages. And I think if also the family is this hard work. I learned a lot of work ethic, and a lot of folks joke, well, that's the Midwestern work ethic. I'm grateful for it. And I think if anything, it's just a lot of fun, Kara, with that many kids running around and parents. And I had a great stepfather, and having that dynamic, how do you describe that buffet of ideas and ages and music, and also just a lot of laughter and fun. It taught me, as I go out now in the world the last 20 years as a speaker and writer, how to really meet people where they're at. So I have to give my huge family credit for a lot of that.
That is super cool. I love the terminology, the picture you painted there, the buffet of so much different input. Yeah. In our world right now, Tony, it is almost 2023, as you mentioned, and COVID has separated and divided us so much. How important is opening yourself up to more than just the people inside of your 4 walls?
These are great questions. So thank you for that. I think the elephant in the room is I think we're ready to leave it behind. However, the healing and the acceptance of, hey, we got so divided. Why? So there's still questions I believe they're going to remain for many, many years. But my word for the year, people put this on social media a lot, and I just created it today. It's been on my mind for a few weeks, is forward. What do we do to look forward? We learn the lessons from the past, but I think that the COVID gets so much attention still. And I'm not downplaying. Everyone has their opinion on it, but I think it's kind of like, let's move on from this. And there's enough information out there that people can research. Most of us have had it. And I think if anything, if we learn, hopefully, that we can get divided pretty quickly. And now that the world is opening up again, I think that freedom is going to come to the forefront. And you look at a lot of the old legacy media, your mainstream media, they're very good at getting us divided and distracted. So if someone's listening to this, hopefully they get an idea or two or nugget is watch out who's distracting your attention and what are they doing to get you knocked off your goal to be a better human. And so much negativity gets too much press. Social media is also a great tool where you can get your word out there, but you got to watch out for the trolls and the negative people. I had a negative comment this morning that almost distracted me. And I get those too, but someone blocked me because I'd put something up on one of my pages. I thought I just put, hey, not a problem, letting people know, okay, Happy New Year. I am not going to let someone I've never met, who I don't know what they're going through, get into my head too much. And it was like, wow, self-check time, Tony. If you let someone pull you in, that negativity, the hundreds, if not thousands of people a day that you really want to try to give hope to as the hope dealer, that distracts from the mission. So I guess if anything, to answer your question is, you look at the world as we head into this new year and say, do I want to be reactionary or do I want to be proactive? Am I going to respond accordingly and continue to move forward, Kara? Forward.
Right. So your intent is to be the thermostat, not the thermometer.
Very good. Yeah, it's a good analogy.
I love that analogy because we need more of you.
Well, thank you. And what you're doing as well. I mean, when I get asked to go onto a podcast, television, radio program, I'm always honored because, hey, they see value. I'm not the most conventional play. 2 years ago when the first Positive Disruption, hold on here, the first volume came out. I've got a stacks of the new ones here. I remember when they'd asked me to go on interviews and podcasts and television, I'm like, thank you. Like, I'm not the one talking about the height of the pandemic. It's not to contradict moving forward, but I was stunned that they brought me on. And some people actually brought me in the studio. I'm like, thank you. Their life goes on. The human condition, we've been through wars and pandemics. The human race will continue to move forward, I believe. And I don't know if you have children or not, Kara.
I've got grandkids. I skipped the kid part, but
okay. So, but you have a stake in that. I look at this, and this is just a strong opinion moment. I'm not quitting. I'm going to intensify, especially the last 3 years, my mission for not only the people I love to help and those I've never met yet, but my children are watching me. And it's been interesting. Two of my kids, actually all three now, my oldest daughter was at a fundraiser event this year, had been to events I've either been a part of or I've hosted. And all three of them, two of them were during the height of the pandemic, were at events that I did live. And I look back now and I go, it's not about pride. It's about showing them by example. I'm not a perfect dad. They know that. However, during the height of all this crazy train, we were doing live events. We didn't stand back in fear. We lived. We weren't reckless. We had people that showed up to our live events, Kara, in 2020 and 2021 that wanted to be there. We did all the safety things, but I was not going to sit back and let my entire business shut down. I'm like, no, we're going to do live events safely. And when people said you can't, that gave me more inspiration to say, we're going to do these events. So I'm grateful now that no one was, obviously got sick. We did the live events, all the photos, the videos, the joyful testimonials are there as proof that the hour of when we had a couple years of darkness, we're like, no, we're going to shine the flashlight and say, we're not quitting living, Kara. And what if someone said you're going to die tomorrow? Would you look at your life with those 30 days with vitality and energy and get your affairs in order? Absolutely. So if anything, I look at my peers in the industry, fellow writers and speakers. Here's the challenge if they listen to this. Get on an airplane, get your book done, get your presentation ready, get out there and share it with people because the world needs that more than ever right now, Kara. I'm almost knocked my camera over here. I'm getting so excited.
Yeah.
This is when we're going through seasons of adversity globally with historically that the positive hope dealers need to really step up and really intensify to counter all the darkness. I know it sounds a little woo-woo, maybe a little spiritual, but we're spiritual beings in a human body. And I have friends of all faith persuasions, and I love them dearly. I think a spiritual grounding right now is necessary. I don't know how people are getting by. And I pray for my agnostic and my atheist friends, and I just go, man, you're stronger than me, because if I didn't have a spiritual grounding to remind me that this is going to all fade, I don't know what I would do on someday. Because the misconception is I'm always positive. I am not. And I think that as I've approached 50, I have more discernment to look at it and say, I'm more pragmatic with my optimism, because I've had setbacks. Some I've caused, some have been brought upon me. But I say, look, are you going to volunteer or going to be a victim when you think about this? Are you going to learn a lesson from it? Are you going to not capitalize, but are you going to get growth and wisdom to get better from it and not become bitter and angry? And let me caution you, a lot of people have given up. And it frustrates me because I just go, man, I hope something I say, a book, a quote, gets them riled up. Or if they see me speak live, I get them agitated in the audience to go, well, I hadn't thought of it that way. Good. I've got you thinking again that your situation's not as bad and woe is me as you think it is, because the human condition is built on growth, learning, and continuing to look forward. Does this sound familiar?
Very, very. So there are so many, boy, you're going to get me on a box here. There are so many people who say, my life is terrible and there's nothing I can do. The fixed mindset group.
Yeah.
And And yet they want you to come and rescue them out
Mhm.
of what their thinking has gotten them into. And they're absolutely in denial that it's their thinking that has them where they are.
Yeah.
Let's go there. You're being bold. Let's go there.
Well, first, I'm not Dr. Phil. I'm not a therapist. I've been to lots of great therapists, especially the last decade. I had a divorce. I had an addiction that I've worked with each day for 5 years clean. And I look at that and go, boy, I'm grateful for the empathy and the wisdom of people that helped me in my darkest hours. So I'm trying to, like a baton, hand off what's been given to me and then hand it back over through a lot of my teaching. And the last two books, The Positive Disruption and the Mind Capture series, have been about internal. Go in to listen, to get quiet, to meditate and listen to your intuition, especially the last 3 years, because and I've been guilty of this, look to the external for all our validation. All got to have all the new cars and the new horses and the homes. Nothing wrong with that. I am not anti-prosperity. I am anti-giving all of our power away for the next goal that we keep chasing that consumes us. And then we look for the validation of the leaders. Where were they the last 3 years? There was not a lot of leadership, Kara. I've told this to CEOs. If you really want to step up right now, start listening, have empathy, and give your team a stake and let them give feedback, you will shine. But the old model of leadership died during the pandemic. It was exposed. It was brought to the light that a lot of the emperors have no clothes, male and female leaders. So I'm not trying to go on a negative tangent. I'm seeing what everyone else is seeing right now. So I go back and say, hey, I can't save you. I can get you to think a little differently. I can't motivate you. I can't motivate anybody, Kara. I can maybe inspire them, maybe get them to question their current situation. But they have to, as an adult, know when they've had enough of the old sick and tired of being sick and tired, to say, today is the day I start to make a change. Maybe I go to the gym, I take a walk, I read a book, I read a scripture, I read a spiritual book, I meditate, I forgive someone, I send a thank you post or a text. But those little forward movements like dominoes, those progressions are an individual choice. And it's always interesting when I do a live event, there's always the back row, the veterans. They sit like this and they kind of look me up and down, which they should. And they think, and I always say this live, question everything I'm going to share. You should not believe me verbatim. You have your own free will, your own independence. It's a gift. But if it gets you to think a little differently, positively, of course, then I've done my job. Because sometimes I might be in LA one day, Montana the next, back in Michigan. And those are different types of, I would say, thought processes or areas. But the good news is humans at their core are all the same, Kara. We all want to improve. We all have our goals. And it's not that people give up because they want to. They get stuck in their own head and they go, oh, I tried that. And I'm thinking, well, try again. Well, what about that? Well, ask a better question. So it's interesting. Again, I've had cycles in my own life, which some people are shocked at, where I've had months where I've been kind of down. And I'm like, maybe I have imposter syndrome. That seems to be the big catchword the last year online is imposter syndrome. I think what it comes down to, it's our biggest ally is our head, our thoughts. It's either the biggest ally or it's the biggest enemy. It's called your self-talk. And I'm definitely, in the world we're in the last 10 years with social media, believer, you need to program it every day the best you can to help override all the negative media around you and your own negative self-talk. Because internally, when you go to sleep and when you wake up in the morning, the biggest challenge you have is your internal voice knows everything about you. And that voice, he or she inside of you, will look at you and try to get you to have that little talk in your mind. Well, you can't do that. Maybe you should just be quiet. Maybe that idea is not a good idea. And you have to literally say, stop it. Shut up. I'm going forward. I'm going to ignore you. I'm going to put you on the shelf. I'm going to hit mute button. And I'm moving in spite of that little dark voice called doubt and division. Now, the last few years, you've got it amplified with our media, online, old line, new social media, however you define it, which is mainly negative, Kara. It's easier for people to go on Facebook. I call it bitch book. They'll go on bitch book and bitch about things. I don't see it as much because guess what? I'm not attracting that. Or I just put people on snooze. If they're that negative, they're not going to like me. So some people go, my news feed's so negative. Well, who are you running with? Well, you may have to edit that down or put certain people on snooze for 30 days because, again, what you're thinking is a direct reflection of what you're also pulling in. And a lot of people don't get that. And if you're seeing someone really acting out negatively towards you, that usually means internally they're having some issues, and you have to pray for them. You still have to love some of them and say, hey, figure it out. But long answer here, I can't save anybody. And sometimes clients want me to come in and wave the magic wand. I say, no, I have to be very practical and realistic here. If you believe, we've got to have you on board with me. We've got to look at one or two key things we want to move the needle forward, and it has to be an ongoing program. Ongoing training, for example, versus me coming in one time, can't solve it all with a one-time rah-rah. Old Tony used to think that in his 30s and 40s. The 50-year-old Tony goes, no, it's going to take a while. If you've had this negative thinking or negative culture, it's going to take a while to turn it to the positive. That's just a reality.
Absolutely. Wow. Okay. So how did you get to this point? We sure skipped from this is where I grew up to I'm out there and I've got thousands of people that are getting rah-rahed by me and so on and so forth. So what caused this to be your path?
I think it's a restlessness that hit in my late 20s, early 30s. I worked in corporate America. I worked for companies that, went public and have been a part of companies that have done very, very well. So I have an entrepreneur, corporate America mentality to start. In my early 30s, I wrote a book that took off. I was writing it when my two daughters were very little. Because everyone kept saying, you need to write a book. You're really good at teaching. You got all these marketing ideas. A lot of what I'm seeing this year going into 23 is people say, hey, put your marketing cap on. We need you to help us with our business now. We love the motivation, Tony, but you're a marketer. And if you look at a lot of my stuff, as you see online, I'm about having fun and doing promotions and partnering with charities and talking about referrals. And a lot of people forget that they have to market, Kara. And I look at this and say, okay, the old marketing soul is still there. And what's happened is I've gotten much more spiritual the last 5 years because I had a major crash in my life. I said I needed to get change where I was thinking about what success meant. So if I look at, where we're at right now with writing, I didn't grow up thinking I was going to be a motivational speaker. You don't usually say, hey, I want to grow up and be a speaker, especially before we had the internet. High school and college, the internet came out in my senior year of college. I remember sending an email to Australia and we got a reply the next day. This was 1994. I'm like, oh my God, we got an email back from Australia. How cool is that? Oh my gosh, our kids today and grandchildren be like, that's a dinosaur. So me as a Gen Xer at 50, if you look at demographically my age group, we grew up in the analog world. It's transitioned in our 20s to digital. So there's a lot of the old world thinking that still permeates through us Gen Xers that are 50. And we say, wow, I didn't know I'd have several different careers, Kara. And I still, hopefully, knock on wood, thank you, God, will have maybe another 20, 30 years of productive work. I might keep changing and evolving again. So I would say the genesis was, I love to help people. I love to teach. People say you're a professional speaker. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. But I'm more of a teacher now. And it's fun. And what gets me fired up is that if I see someone say, hey, you know what, I was having a bad day, or I was going to give up, or I didn't think I could write a book. Many years later, I get these emails and text or a physical mailing like, hey, here's my book. You don't remember me. I love those messages. I was in Omaha 10 years ago and you said something that helped my life. And I'm like, thank you, God.
Amen.
That's the joy of it, because you don't know who you're going to impact here.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So it's a hard life that you have chosen. Other people would look at it and say, it's a hard life to be on the road all the time, to be speaking all the time, to be having to think about where your next meal is coming from. Where's your next deal? It's a lot for you. It seems to totally energize you.
Well, I think your honesty is refreshing, because a lot of people see the book, they see a bestseller, they see a picture in front of a live group, and they think, oh, it's always the rock star life. Oh, it's a lot of work to get the stage, to get on that stage, to get a physical book done and get people believing in you and having a team to pull it to formation. But it's also very I wouldn't say enjoying is such a word. It's fulfilling, because you see the end product of, wow, you can actually set a big goal and you can go after writing a book. You can get in front of a group to positively influence or disrupt them. And I get a lot of no's, Kara. I coach a lot of speakers and authors that seek me out and say, I want to do what you do. I'm like, are you sure? Because my mom warned me 20 years ago, There's a high divorce rate. There's a high level of addiction in the industry. Not that I wanted to manifest that, but you're solo, like almost like a traveling monk or a traveling nun in the spiritual world, because you're on the road a lot by yourself. And if you don't fill it with constructive things, the negative can creep in. So I say that not to scare people away from the lifestyle, but if anything, how bad do you want it is the question to ask. You have to ask, how bad do you really want to do this? And I draw a parallel to your line of work, real estate. It's a lot of similarity. You're making offers back and forth. You don't get paid unless a deal closes for a buyer or a seller. Sometimes you go months without a paycheck in real estate when you're starting out the first few years. In 2020 and 2021, my income dropped like 90% on speaking. People are like, well, you could do Zoom training. Imagine in real estate, they cut your commission 90% for 2 years. All the realtors would be in the streets picketing. I'm like, well, that's kind of what happened to us professional speakers or teachers, is all the live speaking went away. And now you've got the challenge where meeting planners are like, well, we didn't used to have to pay that much. I'm like, well, we didn't have a pandemic before then either. So the value proposition is having to be reestablished in the market space. So absolutely, there's been some really lean years. There's been some really good years. I've had some clients that see it and love me, and then a year later go, we're going another direction. And you have to go, I can't take it personal, Kara. They've written me testimonials. They love me 1 year. They put me on the road. And the next year, a new CEO, a new VP takes over. They act like they don't even know me. I have to say, no, I'm grateful for the time I could serve you. And there's always other people out there that I can reach. So thank you for the brutal honesty of this interview, because I usually get softball questions and I'm like, okay, that's fun, but let's go deeper down the rabbit hole and really talk about the adversity that also makes you better at your craft. Here's a little misconception. People think, well, you make it look easy, you must not be nervous. Oh, I'm still nervous on stage. It never goes away. If it were to happen, I'm probably done as a teacher, and I hope it never occurs. I don't mail in my presentations. I mean, I have 3 live events next month, a couple more in February. So I'm getting back on the road again, speaking live, which I love. However, I still get nervous. And the most nervous I get is when my family's in the audience. If my children are in the audience, my mom goes to my annual boot camp. She's like the legend. I'm like, Mom better be at the front table at my annual event. She's always welcome there. And I get nervous because they see me in a totally different light, Kara. Like, oh, wow, I can't believe that's what you do. My son was at my most recent event here a couple months ago, and he came up afterwards and goes, Dad, you're really good at what you do, and you're funny. I'm like, let me tape record this. I actually know what I'm doing sometimes, but it was very gratifying and fulfilling to have my mom and my son in the audience, and my partner, Linda, my girlfriend's in the audience. But I really get ramped up because I'm like, boy, it's like, imagine if someone was watching you at work that you love, watching you over your shoulder, do what you do for your job. It'd be a little intimidating. So I thank God for that. It's one of the top 5 human fears. I practice at it. I still am always creating and changing things. I don't ever want to mail it in and act like, oh, I got this, it's easy. You don't know. And you never know, Kara. Here's a lesson for your listeners. Who's in the audience? So if you're thinking you're having a bad day in your job, you got to leave it in the parking lot. You got to hit mute button for a minute. And when you're on the phone call or a Zoom call or a live meeting face-to-face, never mail it in. And I know it's tough because life hits us with illness and tragedy and accidents. Things go wrong, but we owe it to do our best to show up with our game face on, to be present when we're in that meeting with someone or at our job. And again, the world's full of distraction. You know, everyone's got a cell phone at their hip or right in their desk. But you give the gift of your presence, your listening, your empathy when you engage people, and you don't just act like, I'm on to the next meeting, I'm looking ahead. Do your best not to do that.
That is great advice. And that's my word of 2023 is present.
Thank you for sharing that. Cool.
Yes. Yes. And one of the silly tricks that has helped me so much is just push the button and say, go on, do not disturb. Right. Because while I'm here, if this thing was buzzing, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't really be here. And this is like such an incredible opportunity to get to talk to you one-on-one. I've got you all to myself. This is awesome. Thank you for being so real, because so many people do look at and see what you do and say, I could do that. But would they really want to?
Well, you're very welcome. And I think if anything is, I get asked a lot of times, hey, I want to speak and do what you do. Is is there a need for it, or would I be good? I'm like, please jump in and join us. We need more people to go out and help at events. With live events coming back in really full force in 2023, conferences, annual meetings, we need more people to step up. A lot of my friends retired during the pandemic. I had a couple that passed away, from illness. And some are like, you know what, I went and got another job. I understand it completely. And I just say, hey, we need more people to constantly fill the void. There's no shortage. I don't have a mentality of I can't share my secrets with you. I think that's extremely selfish. I've been gifted by having great mentors. Some have given me their time freely. Some I've paid or invested to learn from the best in the world. And to me, it's again, handing off the baton to the next wave and saying, hey, we need more people to step up. And to me, a tough sell was Positive Disruption, the books in 2020 and 2021, when fear was constantly being pumped on us, to say, all right, now this is where you need to see how much you really believe in your message. Because everyone's looking like you're from Pluto, like you're nuts. Haven't you heard? I'm like, yeah, but I don't care. I don't mean that flippantly or that I don't care about humans. I love people. That's why I do what I do. But we need to keep, again, saying, what's the better question to ask? What is the Einstein quote? The significant problems we face will have to have different questions or different mindset. I'm paraphrasing the great Albert Einstein. But the world needs people to step up and say, hey, I got an idea. Hey, I've had a couple of ways to maybe look at this. Let's ask a different question. Because the old way of thinking is not going to cut it, Kara. It's not. And I'm grateful to see a lot of wrangling in corporate America, especially with the leaders saying, we got to rethink this. And there's still many of them stuck in the old world thinking that, well, they're going to be loyal to us. Well, if you show them loyalty and some empathy and listen to them, they may stick around longer. But your smart CEOs know, especially under age 30, they're built on the world of side hustle. They're doing 2-3 jobs now. That's what corporate America said the last 20 years was acceptable. Well, you reap as you sow. And I'm not being mean to corporate America. I just think it's a great transition or a pivot point where they have to say, we've got to rethink HR, training, mindset, work-life balance, because the pandemic showed us that now the world, there's a whole kinds of options, Kara. And if you want the best talent, you're going to train. Let me give you an HR tip and for a lot of your listeners. The best way to retain is to retrain. Oh, I'm damn biased. But I see it doesn't have to be me, but if it's another company, the top companies right now are not cutting back next year on training or marketing. That's the easy route. We're going to cut back on training while your best people are going to leave. I'm going to laugh privately. I'm like, because you're not giving them any reason to stay there. It's like a ship without a captain. It's just going to drift. And the top companies, small, mid-sized startups, are going to continue to train and retrain to retain. Catch the wordplay there? That's how they're going to keep. And their best employees are also going to be their best recruiter workforce. If they're happy at their job, they're going to tell their cousin, their friend, their buddy in another city, I love my company. Tell me more. You cannot buy that through a recruiter or LinkedIn. I'm sorry. But training in the mindset is key, especially where we're going into 23.
I'm right there with you 1,000%. I'm with Keller Williams, which is a training and coaching company. That's what awesome. We do. So I know the need for it. I get the need for it. And if you're not fortunate enough to be with a huge company like Keller Williams, that's where Tony comes in and can absolutely.
Hey, tell Gary that I want to be a keynoter. I'm manifesting. Hey, Keller, I'm looking for you. Gary,
right on.
Guy.
Right on. There you go. It's going to happen. I can feel it. I can definitely feel it. And there's nothing better than being on a Keller Williams stage. It is just, we just had Sean Anchor, the Happiness Advantage, for our last big deal. And he just wowed us all. And as you will very soon, I'm sure. So how can people get a hold of you? What do you want them to know? But last thing before you go, you have to tell me best piece of advice that you've gotten.
Okay, best piece of advice. I would say to continue to always question things. And I'm going to draw on something you can ask any of my kids. I did this live with my son at my boot camp 2 months ago. I looked at him, I said to the group, I said, I've always believed you have to question everything. And I looked at my son, I said, Braden, is this true? And he goes, yeah, Dad, question everything and think for yourself. He said it right from the front room. I'm like, because, now I'm going to, if he said, I don't know, Dad, then I'm like, okay, I lost all credibility here. But think for yourself and question everything. I've always, as a child, questioned everything. It drove my teachers nuts. The nuns in Catholic schools got tired of me asking questions. College professors like, you're always asking questions, man. It wasn't to be mean. I'm just curious. I have a picture on my desk in front of me at like 5 years old, young Tony. And it looks the phone to never lose curiosity and fascination for living life, to be engaged even on days I have tough calls or I got to do emails or it's kind of like a boring day for me, is to be fascinated by the process like a child would. So that's my advice there. Easiest way to reach me, you can find me on social media, as you know, Kara, or my main webpage is mindcapturedgroup.com. Again, mindcapturedgroup.com. Amazon me, Google me. I should show up. There's no priors or felonies there. Thank you, Lord. I had a couple thoughts over the years, but I didn't do it. Thank you, God. So.
Right on. Well, Tony, I can't thank you enough for giving us your time and for giving everybody your time. You are very passionate about what you do. Just so you guys know, I got to meet Tony at a Remax convention, I don't know, 5-7 years ago, something like that.
Share one quick thought?
Yes.
You're very welcome. I'm grateful for the invitation, Kara. I remember that event in Albuquerque, and I'll tell you why. I would joke with people that my first call was a rock player. I've got all my guitars here. I love rock and roll music. I went in the studio as a teenager, and we had some record labels looking at us. So I grew up thinking in my early, 20s, late teens, that I would be signing, there's a Sharpie, boobs, not books. Okay? Books. Now, a guy after that event in Albuquerque, which you're in the audience, I joked about that. He came up and there's a photo of me autographing a man's chest. He pulled his shirt down, I'm autographing. I said, finally it happened. I got to autograph a boob, but it was a dude. So I don't care if people are politically correct. I like to have fun. There's certain things that you just can't help but laugh at. And you know what? Everyone was over 18 in the room when I made that joke and told that story. So let me throw this out. It's okay to laugh. Each day is a gift, Kara. I've had so many friends and family. My father died when I was 11 years old. He was 46 years old. He was way too young. And I just go, I better be laughing every single day and having joy. Because if the clock hits midnight and God says you're coming home, I better have laughed my ass off a couple times that day. That's the gift that we're given as humans. I have happy faces around me. I have cowbells on my desk. I don't care. Whatever I can do to engineer a laugh, a joy, something that keeps me moving forward, that is the gift called life, my friend.
And dude, I was not going to bring that up. That was one of my realtors. That was Rich. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. I think that's probably why you and I connected, because he's just like, I'll let you sign mine. And you're just like, yeah, that it was very fun, and keep spreading the joy, man. It absolutely is making a difference. And every single person, Tony, that you impact, whether you know it or not, whether it's on social media or in person, then they go and they impact others. We all are powerful beyond belief.
Cool. Final thought. Never give up your personal sovereignty or power. If you're alive and can hear this and have a phone and a home and food, you are richer than many people on the planet material-wise. And life goes fast, Kara. Enjoy the ride. I'm like, hey, I don't have all the knowledge, all the answers. I have libraries and mentors and coaches, but I am passing it on from them, giving it to me on to others long after I exit the earthly plane, is that, hey, enjoy this ride called life.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Thank you. God bless.
Awesome. Happy New Year in advance, my friend.
You as well.